All right, our website, awesome, is looking pretty awesome at this point. We've created a navigation bar at the top. We have our little featured section with some blog posts. We have some cool little main sections with some big images. Now we need to keep going, and we're going to create a little call to action section that's going to have a background image, some text, and then of course a button. So let's get right into it. If you probably have guessed already, we need to go back into our index.html, and we are going to create a new div below our last section, which was our showcase 2 container. Let's go ahead and let's make sure that we add a container here so we know where this one ends and one starts, and we will say end showcase 2 container. And there we go. So with that being said, let's create a new div, and this is going to be very unique. So we're going to give it an ID, and we're going to call this, let's just do call to action, because we're calling this our call to action section. And let's go ahead, give that some space. Let's go ahead and also give that a comment so we know where it ends. End call to action. All right, there we go. And we can begin creating some content within this. So if we go ahead and take a look at our demo website, we know that we don't need 2 columns. We most certainly don't need 3 columns. So we're going to create, similar to what we've done before, we're going to create a 1-column setup for this one. That way, if we wanted to add more sections that just have centered 1 column of content, then we could do that quite easily. So let's go ahead and let's create that. I'm going to first, let's also use our showcase class as well. So we're going to do div class showcase. All right. Now, within our div class showcase is where we're going to create our first column. And I'm using div class showcase because I want to share some of the same styles without having to redo everything. So with that being said, let's create our div class column. And we're going to do call 1. So we're going to use the same naming conventions we've used thus far. And we're going to have all of our content fall within this div class 1. So let's go ahead, and the first thing we need to create is a title. It's going to say, what are you waiting for? ? This is going to be an H1. So let's create an H1 tag for that, big header. Back into brackets, we'll do H1, and let's go ahead and I just copied and pasted that in there. We may want to create some styles, and by may, I know we're going to want to create some styles for this. So let's give this H1 a class, and we're going to call that class, let's call it action title. There we go. And now we need to, of course, create a P class, or rather some paragraph text. So let's do a P. And let's go copy what that is as well. This is going to say get started today for free, no credit card required. Copy that. Let's paste that inside there as well. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Now we need to, I think we're pretty good on the index.html side, unless we need, let's see, try today. Oh, we're going to need of course, we're going to need a button as well. So let's go ahead and create a button back into brackets below our column 1. So inside our column 1 div, of course, we need to create our button. So first, I want to apply a style from a paragraph here, and I want this to be centered. So let's just do P style text align, and this is kind of a little hacky type of way that I like to center things without having to create new classes or do stuff. So it's a little hacky way that I do things. And now we're going to create a little button. So let's use a href, and that's going to give us a link. And we're going to just make this an empty link for now. Let's give this a class, and we'll call that class sign up btn for sign up button. All right. And let's close that A, and within the A, we're going to say try today. All right, so let's go ahead, save that, take a look. Obviously, we haven't applied any styles, so there's no telling what that's going to look like. Okay, so there we go. What are you waiting for? Get started today and try for free. No credit card required. All right, so let's begin styling this. We just created a bunch of different classes. Now let's go ahead and add them. The first class we created is call to action. So we're going to start with our call to action. That's where we're going to add our background image. So in this lecture's downloads, there will be an image available called darkdesk.png. Make sure you go ahead and download that really quickly. And let's head over to our style.css and begin working on these styles. So, of course, our first is going to be the call to action. And we made that an ID. So let's do call to action, curly brackets, and let's start giving this some styles. Okay, and let's go ahead and add the background image. So we're going to use the background image syntax, and we'll select URL. And from there, we'll do ..dash images. And from images, we need to find the darkdeskimage.png. There we go. Perfect. So now that we have that, let's save it, take a look. Okay, so first thing we'll notice is the image is far more zoomed in. It's not in the right spot that we want. Don't worry, I'll take care of that momentarily, but let's go ahead and keep styling so we can get the content filled out, and then we'll fix that at the end. So the next step will be to start styling our text and our button. Now let's go ahead, let's create a new one, and let's edit and I have to go back. Let's go ahead and edit our action title really quickly so we can make that appear big and white as it is in the example. So let's go ahead and create our action title class. All right, so let's do a few things. One, we need to take the font size way up. So let's go ahead and take that all the way up to 4M. We're going to take the font weight down to about 300. We need to make it, I believe it's white, perfectly white. So let's change the font, or rather the color, to white. There we go. Let's make sure it's centered because it's not currently centered. So we'll do text align, and we're going to make that centered. I think that ought to do it. Let's actually let's give it a margin at the top of 0. And one last thing, if we look at our example, we'll notice that there's a good amount of space here, and I don't want to have to come back and do it. So let's just give that, let's try maybe padding at the top of, let's try 50 or 100. I want there to be maybe even a bigger space. So let's do or rather, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the padding here. So the padding from the top, if we look at ours, we'll notice that there's not much of a padding here. So let's give it a padding of about 100. We'll go back in. Let's do padding, top, 100 pixels. There we go. Now let's go ahead and take a look at ours. We should see that this big what are you waiting for text is centered. It's white. It's got a bigger padding. It's thinner. And there we go. So what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? It looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and change our P text as well so that it is also white, a little bit bigger. I'm not sure that the thickness will change. We'll see. Let's go back in. Let's start a new style, and this one's going to be our, and since this is in column 1, let's do a col 1 P tag here. Oh, and more importantly, we need to set up our column 1. So why don't we go ahead and do that first? And the way we're going to do that is let's just go above the call to action, and we're going to create a class for call 1. That's why it's not lined up directly in the center like we wanted. So curly brackets here, And let's go ahead and let's give this a width. So the first thing we do with our columns is we give them a width, and we're going to do about 80%. And all we really need to do other than that is center this. So let's give this a margin of auto. And we know what that does when we have a width set and we give it margin auto. Okay, so it appears, let's take a look. All right, so everything is centered. Kind of. So we now have that width. You may not have noticed, but this text moved over a little bit because it's now within 80% of our parent container. Now we can go ahead and let's do the column 1 p text. So we're going to do column 1, and then we're going to do a style for everything inside of column 1 that has a p tag. So let's do, the font size needs to go up like we said. So let's take the font size up. And that's not going to go up not quite as much. Let's do 1.6 em. Very good. Let's take the font weight. And that's going to be, let's go up a little thicker than the title. So 400. All right, that sounds about good. We need to change the color, obviously, to white as well. There we go. Let's make sure that this is text aligned to the center. And let's take a look and see if there's anything else here that we might want to change. I think there might be a little bit of a padding here on the top. Let's just go ahead and save that and see what it looks like. Okay, get started today and try for free, no credit card required. And then we have our try today little button here. Let's go ahead and give this a margin of 0. And that did not do what I wanted it to do. Also, I want this button off of here, so we're going to give this, let's do a padding on the bottom of about 60 pixels. Should move the button off. All right, so that's where we want our button. Let's take a look. Get started today and try for free, no credit card. All right, so if anything, our text is a little bit thicker. So I want to take the font weight down a bit. And what we have it at is 400. Let's take that down to 300. Okay, so a little bit better. That's fine for now. Let's go ahead and style this button. And let's go back into our index.html and see what we named that. So we've created a class for our button, and it's sign up button. So sign up, one word, BTN. So sign up BTN. There we go. And let's start creating our classes for this. So the first thing, and I wrote down the colors, the background color we need is going to be pound 60C 77A. All right, and that should do it. We also want to change the color of our text to white. So we'll change that as well. Now, let's give the font size 1em. And guys, remember, you can play around with all these styles, and I encourage you to do that because I want you to see exactly what changes what and what looks better. And maybe you don't like the font size being that small, or you don't like the font weight at 200, which we're about to do. So I encourage you to make sure that you play around with it. Let's do the font weight of 200. Let's give this a padding. Well, I don't want to add a padding just yet until I see. Let's go ahead, save that, see what it looks like. Okay, so not good. A little bit better, but definitely not good. Definitely not like this. So what do we have to do? Well, we need to do quite a few things, actually. We need to give it some padding. And then it looks like we need to get rid of this underline here. So that's a text decoration. First things first, let's go back in here. Let's get rid of that underline right there. And that's going to be text decoration, and we're going to just do none. And then also I said we wanted to give it some padding to make it big. Let's do padding here. And let's do 30 pixels on the top and the bottom, and then space 90 pixels on the left and the right. Let's save that. Hopefully, there we go. So now we look a lot more like this button. There is a little bit of a button hover effect going on there, which we can add. It's just changing the colors. We also may want to give this button a little padding on the top, or rather, spacing from the bottom of our text here, which I'll go ahead and do right now. Let's go back into brackets, back up to our column 1, and let's take our padding bottom up to, let's do 100. I want a little more space there. So now that we're back at 100, let's take a look. Okay, so I like that spacing a little bit better. Not perfect, but it'll do. I just want to keep moving. Remember that this is supposed to be a quick way to learn HTML and CSS by practicing and actually building something. Now let's take a look at how we can style our button so that, like this one, when we hover over it, it changes colors. So we're going to go ahead and open up our styles, and we're going to add a new style. And the way we add a style to a specific button and the actions that it has is we can do sign up button, BTN, and then we do :hover. And this is going to style the actual hover effect. And all we're going to do here is just change the background color. And I wanted to do this just so you guys could see how we do this. So we can actually give these styles. We'll do background color, and we're going to do £5CB F2A. And let's go ahead and just save that. All right, there we go. So you'll notice that when we hover over the button, it changes colors. And we've pretty much recreated this, other than the fact that the background is a bit off. I want to try something with this background image and get it more like this one. So what we'll do is we'll go back into brackets. I want to go back up to our call to action background image, and I want to change the background position, which we can do. So let's change the background position, and we're going to change this to 50% space 50%. So it's going to be on the bottom, top, left, and right. And let's also give this, let's go to padding at the bottom too. And let's do 45 pixels. Okay, there we go. So now we are a lot closer. There we go. So we have the actual part of the background image. And I wanted to show you guys that how we can change the background position and change the padding to really change, well, rather just the background position, to change what we're seeing on the background. Because it can be really important when you're using a really big background image and you don't want it to show a specific part. You kind of want to crop it out. So that's a little bit better. Now we're moving on to the second to last section, which is our 2-column section here. Notice that we have 2 columns, and we're going to have a little form inside one of these. So let's get that one underway.